Good morning. I'm Perry Bacon. I'm the host of the New Republic show right now. I'm honored to be joined this morning by Jason Stanley. He's a professor of philosophy at the University of Toronto. He wrote an excellent book in 2018 about how fascism works. He was one of the first people, he was one of the people most prominent people early on to start using that word to describe Trump and really sort of crystallize thinking around this. So, Jason, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Perry. Great to be in conversation with you.
So I want to start, when you and I set up the talk, it was before the US and Israel had decided to launch these military attacks in Iran. But talk about that for a second in terms of like in the fascism story, like, or in the Trump story. Where do you like, to me, as an American political expert, for lack of a better word, it's like an unauthorized war. It feels like echoes of the Iraq war. But I'm curious as an expert in philosophy and fascism, how you see what's happened the last few days.
Yeah. So when those of us like a decade ago started saying Trumpism, MAGA is a fascist social and political movement, one that builds on the racial fascism that has so long characterized the United States, people said, well, if it's fascism, where's the imperialism? It can't be fascism unless it's expansionist imperialism. So that was the main objection to the fascism thesis. There's a couple other objections, but that was the main one that, fascists always try to expand, they always do wars of aggression. So this has really taken that objection, from a scholarly perspective, quite off the table. And I just want to note how many mainstream pundits claimed that, without any harm to their reputation, that Trump was an anti-war president, that he was going to end foreign wars. I saw this column by Ross Douthat a couple days ago where he was like, oh, it's all the anti-war stuff was fake. It was all rhetoric, without noting at all that he was a major proponent of the Trump will stop foreign wars. So I've always been saying that that rhetoric was fake. Now, what you have in the mainstream media that had for so long gotten this completely wrong, for so long has ridiculed people who said Trump is a democratic threat, what we're seeing is a fascist movement. They're just simply blithely moving on to saying the things we said, like they're like, oh yeah, all that was just rhetoric. It was just posing. He actually is a warmonger. It's really remarkable to see, how much the same people can say one thing on Tuesday and then Thursday act like they never said it. So now what we're seeing is what exactly we would expect if this were fascism, which is wars of aggression that ignore any kind of international order. As Stephen Miller said, this is, it's just the powerful, the Thucydides thing. The powerful get to do whatever they want, and the strong must obey. And that was the doctrine. That is fascist doctrine. That there's no liberalism. There's just the strong over the weak.
Make that connection between imperialism and fascism. It's like, is imperialism inherent to fascism? It's a requirement. Talk about. I don't think I totally understood that comparison. So connect those two terms to me a little bit.
Yeah. So first of all, there was the sort of figures like M.A. Césaire, Hannah Arendt, Du Bois. They recognized that the brutality that the European powers uh, uh, brought to Africa, to African colonialism, legitimated the brutality that they then brought to bear on in war. So as Césaire says, Hitler is the worst man on earth, not because of what he did, which was done to generations of Africans, but because who he did it to, other white people. Now, in the case of the United States, my theorizing in my work is that the United States has colonized it has had internal colonies. We've had two kinds of imperialism. We've had internal colonization of our black population in massive prison camps, and in 2015, Black Americans were the were 9% of the world's prison population. So we had internal colonization. We had a kind of agreement that you could do anything you wanted to poor Black Americans. And then we had wars of choice like Iraq. So we had tons of veterans in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, returning to the United States. So we got used to wars of aggression and we got used to brutal treatment of certain populations where the other population just looked away. And now we're seeing this imperial boomerang thesis, as it's called in the fascism literature, return with this treatment of immigrants, of non-white immigrants particularly, putting them in concentration camps, and wars of aggression.
Is Netanyahu also a fascist in your view?
Oh, of course. Israel's an ethno-state and now has become an ethno-state. I'm not saying that Israel could necessarily had to be, though. If you start off, with one identity, that's not a liberal move. But yeah, Israel is an ethno-state waging imperialist war. I think they want to create failed states around them and expand Israel on behalf of a particular identity. It happens to be my own identity, Jewish people. But I would be inconsistent if I didn't apply my ethics and politics to. And I'm not Israeli; I'm American, so it's just not my country. And so I I can call it what it is, which is it's practicing apartheid. It's a fascist ethno state. Netanyahu has been in power for almost as long as Putin. When I was in Ukraine, a Ukrainian public figure said to me, "You Westerners think that our autocrats, Eastern European autocrats, admire Putin the most. We don't. They don't. They admire Netanyahu the most because Netanyahu has somehow tricked the world into thinking that Israel is a democracy and he's a democratic leader. And also, you can criticize Russia all you want in the West. You can say whatever you want about Putin. That shows Putin's weakness. If you criticize Israel, you'll get booted off platforms. You won't get. I mean, there is serious repercussion. That is power.
Talk about the word. I often use the word authoritarian, use the word autocrat. Why? What's the importance of the word fascist as opposed to authoritarian, autocrat, far right? These other terms. Talk about why fascist is beyond the sort of obvious sort of Hitler comparison. What is, or maybe that is the reason. But what's the importance of the word fascist and using that?
Right. So I'm based in the Black American intellectual tradition, which has always used fascism as a term for, say, Jim Crow. So, now American racial fascism doesn't have a Führerprinzip; it doesn't have a leader. Whereas European mid-century fascism had a leader. Israel has Netanyahu. Russia has Putin. So these are leaders who stay in office for very, very long times, a very, very long period. I mean, I wish Israel will become democratic one day, give equal rights to its Palestinian citizens, to Palestinians, and have a democracy, but and not have these laws. But so fascism involves a hierarchy of first class citizens and second class citizens. In communism, sort of everyone gets to be miserable together in the Soviet Union, and so my family, my grandparents fled Hitler with my mother from Poland to Soviet Union because my grandfather said. Um, uh, Hitler hates the Jews. Stalin hates everybody. Best not to be singled out. So in fascism, there's a preferred group. We now see the official state white supremacy is now the official state policy of the United States. It's the government policy, basically. I mean, not basically. It is the government. It is government policy. So ethnic cleansing in the United States. So those are so a white supremacy. Fascism in the United States is based on white supremacy, getting xenophobia. Mein Kampf, Hitler's Mein Kampf is all about xenophobia. It talks about all the foreigners in Vienna and how you have to clean them out. Now, Nazism is anti-Semitic. American fascist. What we're seeing now from Trump is a sort of German fascist structure, white supremacy, xenophobia, but it's not anti-Semitic. So I mean, I don't think plenty of anti-Semites love Israel, but I don't think Trump is anti-Semitic, and I don't think any kind. Uh, oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Uh,
Everything's fine.
wait, hold on. Uh, Now I'm trying to. I don't think. I don't think we face any kind of concern about genocide of Jewish people in the United States. So that is a real difference. But um, fascism helps you predict the future. So if John Gantz, I agree with him when he says that fascism is like hypothesis that then gets tested with, it allows you to make predictions. So it allows you to make predictions like there are going to be wars of aggression. It allows you to make predictions like they are in fact going to hunt down immigrants and put them in concentration camps and try to make the United States, clean out non-whites from positions of power. The one, it's almost comical. The one cabinet secretary who's black of Trump is Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. That's meant to, you know, uh, juice up stereotypes. It's funny. I mean, it's incredible to like, oh, we're going to we're going to make it illegal to say that the U.S. is racist at the same time as they make the U.S. into a racist.
That's right.
It's like we will vindicate the worst extremes of Black Lives Matter, and while saying that that was all illegal and an overreaction. So fascism allows you to predict what's going to happen. Fascism allowed you to predict the January 6th coup. Fascism will tell you that they're going to try to mess with the elections. Fascism will tell you that ICE is going to be a military beholden to Trump. It's going to tell you that the concentration camps that they're building for immigrants will get ever more dangerous, and it's going to tell you that. And it's going to tell you that at some point they'll start stripping citizens for political citizenship for political disobedience. It will also help you see that it's going to be incompetent because fascism prizes loyalty over competence. So Kash Patel, because he's fanatically loyal. So that's our is that there's going to be a lot of incompetence.
Are you surprised? I mean, Trump was never an isolationist. I agree. Are you surprised that we've invaded two countries in 8 weeks functionally? Venezuela. The sort of Venezuela and Iran so quickly has surprised me a little bit. How did you? Were you surprised? You surprised with the quickness and succession of it?
Well, I'm worried that it's going to accelerate because I think Trump is, I mean, we have to remember the American people elected him twice. So this is Americans. And so I'm not in for this idea of letting Americans off the hook. But the, I think Trump is such a capricious, unpredictable individual. Uh, I mean, in both of these wars have explanations. In the one case, he wants to, impose American will on this hemisphere, and he wants to root out all the left wing governments. So, so especially starting with the autocratic left wing government of Venezuela, and then Cuba is next, and then the Middle East. Well, that's for some strange reason, he has this partnership with Netanyahu. I think that's his fascist partner more than Putin. Um, so one has to look next for what he's going to do. But what I worry about is that he's emboldened. Uh, all of these things, and he's sort of getting addicted to smashing, which is what you would expect from a fascist mentality. So who knows what's going to happen to Greenland? Like, who knows what's next? Because now the U.S. military is his toy, is his plaything, like ICE is his plaything inside the United States.
Talk about you've illustrated fascism and explained it and made me even more aware than I already was. What should the anti-fascists in the U.S. be doing? Like the further from the Democratic Party to journalists, talk about what is an effective anti-fascist movement considering what we're facing.
Well, I think you saw it in Minneapolis. The first thing, you know, is stop the infighting, which is you know, I saw an Instagram sketch where this person was like, it's so easy to become right wing. You just say like, you like you like Donald Trump. You don't like immigrants. If you're okay with LGBTQ people, well, we'll fix that later. Like whereas you have to stop the infighting. I think Karen Attia once said to me, the left likes the left is so powerless. So the only victories they can get are over each other. So it gives them this. So that's gotta stop. You gotta get people who are apolitical motivated. You gotta get a much broader group of people in than, uh, you have to get everyone to feel included in trying to stand up for what are America's core values, the values of the Constitution, uh, because they're trying to change them to blood and soil. As Vance said, it matters whether your ancestors were buried in Gettysburg or whatever. So Minneapolis showed us we had a broad spectrum of activists. We also have to avoid interest takeover. We can't have like one group of people saying, "Oh, we're running the anti-fascist show. It's the Gaza protesters. It's no." It has to be a broad spectrum of Americans who are like, this is not us. And Minneapolis shows you the way. Minneapolis is really the world is so. I mean, America's reputation is beyond in the mud right now. I don't think Americans. It's not cute to be American at all. Like people are not. It's not cute to be Russian. It's not cute. And so people are not finding that. So people have to think we have to restore, some kind of Trump is destroying America's reputation, making people really dislike Americans. So that kind of pride has to be harnessed. And I view Minneapolis as the start. ICE learned from Minneapolis. They learned how brutal they can be. They're going to come back harder next time. The protesters are learning. I think everybody needs to have basements with apartments where they can hide immigrants. Uh, my family comes from a background of, I mean, I don't know. That's You have to entertain those strategies. You have to look at what underground railroad style. That's what we're facing into. So there has to be a covert communication between groups. No violence. Can't be any violence because ICE has the budget of a military. So again, the protesters in Minneapolis showed the way.
So I think there's a question about what the roots of the Trumpism, fascism in the U.S. are. Is it economic stagnation, economic stagnation where the working class is not getting enough wages? Is it racism, sexism, xenophobia, that kind of stuff, or is it like a not a respect for democracy enough? And so therefore, people are not sure. Should you talk about democracy or should you talk about racial issues? You only talk about the economy. Like, where do you see where the coalition should emphasize, and maybe congressmen should run the economy, but professors should talk about democracy. But just talk about what the message of the coalition should be.
I think we have to do everything together. I think, what we can't do is this splitting off, throwing people under the bus, throwing trans Americans under the bus, throwing abortion rights under the bus. That is just not helpful. It doesn't mean that there can't be people in the coalition with different views. That's fine. but but the fact is we have all the elements here. The US has long had a fascist core. I mean, we had, interracial marriage was illegal until 1967. So, I mean, the Nuremberg laws ended in 1945. So the U.S. we had, until recently the largest prison system in the world. Now it's the fourth largest prison system by our incarceration rate is 8 times the level of Canada's. Canada's incarceration rate is one-third the incarceration rate of the U.S. state with the lowest incarceration rate. It is off the goddamn charts. And so the massive prison system, we're building a massive system of concentration camps for mostly non-white immigrants, using that as a model, except it'll be more brutal because there's going to be no rule of law inside. So, uh, so the economic basis, well, we had the total betrayal of the elites. Well, the racism, the Clintons participated in the racism in the 1990s. It was completely bipartisan mass incarceration. Then we had the economic crisis, which was completely bipartisan. The fiscal crisis, which, then under Obama, no one got punished. The American people could see that. Total corruption. And then we had the Iraq War. So all of that, and then massive economic inequality. Now, of course, you turn to a fascist strongman, and the fascist strongman makes it worse. So the conditions never change. So you just keep on having fascism. That's the situation we face. So we need a broad-based coalition. We cannot be attacking people anymore for disagreeing with you an inch. People are going to disagree, but we need conservatives. Fascism wins when conservatives back fascism, when they're like,
Okay.
fascism will get us this better than democracy.
Let me talk about, you were at the Yale University for a while, you're at the University of Toronto now. You've talked about deciding to leave the US. And that was perhaps controversial when you first discussed it. I've met a lot of people this last year and a half who tell me I'm thinking about moving. I have relatives here. I mean, I don't think I don't want to encourage everyone to leave the country, but talk about we are in a serious talk about your decision and talk about the moment we're in terms of like, is it safe to stay in the US on some level?
Well, I had a great opportunity, and my opportunity. I'm building a center to defend U.S. Democracy.
Okay.
So all of what I'm doing here is about trying to, help my country. So, and I think I can do it better here than I could there. I hope I can. So that's the goal. And in the meantime, I hope not to be paying much many taxes to the U.S. war machine.
Agreed.
I mean, if you're in the United States, professors at Yale are paying tens of thousands of dollars to ICE and bombing Gaza, and I spend like $10,000-$20,000 a year on Ukraine, and I spend, $10,000-$20,000 a year on funding the prison policy initiative to fight mass incarceration. But I don't want to offset that by tens of thousands to pay for ICE. But I mean, I do still will always pay some taxes in the United States, of course. But so that was there's an element of like complicity for me. I just don't. There's a you know I love America. I love my country, but I don't want to be involved and associated with this. But everything I'm doing here is for the United States. I'm the named chair in American Studies at the University of Toronto, and I'm building a center to fight for U.S. democracy. So, I think that's an unusual situation. It's not just leaving the United States. It's it's choosing to go somewhere where I think I can be more effective.
I think the question I want to ask, and this is awkward to ask, is like, if we're advising people who are transgender who live in Texas, or if they are
Well, yeah.
professors in critical race theory, is this the time to? I hate to ask it. Is this time to think about living in Europe for a while or Canada for a while if you have these characteristics that the government seems to be targeting right now?
Yeah, if you're American living in Texas, you should leave. If
No,
you're
New York,
someone,
but yeah.
if you have daughters or son, if you have children in Texas and you're worried that one of them might get pregnant in college or something, where, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons where you don't want to live in a country where the laws are the way they are. But there are many reasons everyone should make, I have two kids, they're black and Jewish. I don't want them to have to those are identities that are highly politicized in the United States right now. I want them to be in a place where they're less politicized, where they can just feel free to like go to synagogue and not feel all this weight and be black and not feel like the government is saying, that if they get into an Ivy League school, there'll be a civil rights
Right.
investigation.
Investigation.
Uh,
Right.
so, so, so so those factors, played into my decision. But I think everyone has to make an individual choice about all those things. There were these personal factors, the kind of ick factor about being associated with the United States right now. Like, I feel like I don't have to, uh, I don't have to be to feel like I'm complicit in that system. Uh, but I'm doing what I'm doing for the United States, and so it is the move I'm making is a particular kind of move because I'm devoting all my effort to that. I think absolutely. But that said, yeah, if you stay in the United States, you have an immense responsibility to be constantly uh, when the critique I take very seriously of my actions is you should have stayed and fought. You know, yeah, anyone who stays in the United States has to be deeply involved in their local organizations protecting immigrants, and local organizations protecting trans Americans, protecting the election, integrity of the election. Everyone has to be involved. If you're not involved, your grandchildren will be asking, "What did you do at that time?"
That'd be a great place to end on, but I want to ask one more question, and then we'll be a bit into time here, which is I'm struggling with the do I want to ask you what are you hopeful about beyond Minnesota? What is good? Or is it better? Should we be thinking about what we're hopeful about? Or is this better to like live in this moment of we are being led by a fascist authoritarian and wake up each morning internalizing that and trying to stop him? Is that what should we be thinking about? I mean, it's a hard question. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think those are incompatible.
Okay.
I think that's what Minneapolis showed us. I think Minneapolis is the beginning. I think ICE is going to crack down harder, but I also think that Americans are many Americans don't want to see their neighbors taken away. They don't want to see their kids witness that. It's very traumatic to see your kids witness that. Many Americans don't want this stain. I mean, that's a good way to think about it, is that if you aren't doing something, you are complicit. And so that's a good way that combined with hope, the desire to not have a stain on your soul, I think should be motivating.
Okay. Jason, thanks for joining me. Great to see you. I appreciate all the work you're doing. Take care.
Thank you, Perry.